Well, welcome everyone, wherever you are, to this session 8.2 of this year's European GreenWeek. And this promises to be a fascinating session, which has the potential to affect us all directly. How do the decisions we all make every day have an impact on our living environment and on our health? My name is Rick Thompson, for many years a journalist and broadcaster with the BBC. It's my pleasure and privilege to be your moderator for this very important GreenWeek session. We want you to be involved. You can send in questions to the speakers and take part in opinion polls. The way to do that is through Slido. Just go to slido.com and perhaps on your phone and insert the event code, which is EU GreenWeek 2021, or you can scan the QR code you should be able to see on your screens and then select our session 8.2. Questions and comments will be moderated behind the scenes to avoid duplication, and once approved, everyone can see them. So we've probably all heard about our carbon footprint, our own contribution to greenhouse gas emissions that fuel global warming. But carbon emissions are just one of the impacts on the environment and human health caused by our life choices. And we can measure the environmental impact from various sources of pollution, the effects on our water, our soil, and the air we breathe. In recent years, scientists have been finding out much more about the overall impacts of our lifestyles, the food we eat, the clothes we wear, how we travel to work, the buildings we live and work in, going on holiday, even buying a bunch of flowers. Through a method called life cycle assessment, scientists can now show the impacts of products along their entire life cycle, from the extraction of raw materials to end of life. As consumers, we might not be aware of these impacts, but they are happening through the life of each product. So every product and service has an environmental footprint. Every organization or business has an environmental footprint, but we need information. How on earth can we know which choices to make to achieve a sustainable lifestyle and a zero pollution goal? Can we walk tall but tread light? So before we hear from our expert speakers, we're going to have a poll, a simple opinion poll to get an idea of how much you know about the impacts on your own lifestyle. So if you look at Slido and choose the poll icon, you'll see the question there, and it's multiple choice. There are 4 possible answers. The question is, what personal action of your lifestyle do you think generates most environmental pollution? Driving my own car, using chemical products such as detergents, cosmetics, pharmaceuticals, my electricity and water consumption, my food consumption. I mean, there are other causes of pollution, of course, but which of these 4 would you say contributes most to environmental pollution? And we'll just see how that result comes through in a minute. I mean, in the past 2 days at GreenWeek, we've heard passionate speeches about how vital it is for us to recover from the pandemic in a way that creates a cleaner world, aiming for zero pollution by the year 2050. But if that's to be achieved, it's clear everyone must play their part. So do we have some kind of result of the poll that I can see? I can't see the answer, but I guess you can. Here we are, I can see it. So it seems that most people, or the majority, 41%, think our food consumption, our food choices, actually contribute a lot to environmental pollution. Then it's our electricity and water consumption, driving my own car, only 20%, and chemical products. I mean, there are a lot of them, and we'll be hearing a lot more about that slightly later on. So thank you very much for that. It's very interesting, and we'll see if you're right as we go deeper into this topic during the next hour. This morning, we have 5 expert speakers who are going to help us all understand how we can adjust our lifestyles to reduce harmful emissions of various kinds. 3 of them work at the Sustainable Resources Directorate at the European Commission's Joint Research Centre in Ispra in northern Italy, the JRC. Our other speakers will summarize the work being done by the United Nations Environment Programme and Euroconsumers organization on consumer awareness and the environmental footprint of lifestyles. So let's just see if we can say hello to everybody. Is Giovanni De Santi here from the JRC? Can't see him at the moment. Serenella Sala.
Good morning.
Hello.
Good morning.
Oh, he's there. There he is. Thank you very much, Giovanni. Good to hear you.
Good morning.
If you stick your camera on, we'll be able to see you as well.
Yeah, but I have some very weak connection. If you don't mind, I will stay just on mute, so I can talk to you without any video.
Sorry, all right, you will be there in the darkness, but we can hear you.
Okay, yes, thank you.
Serenella Sala, hello.
Hello, I'm here.
Hello. Good, hello. You have to unmute yourselves, make sure we can hear you. Esther Sanya Mangal.
Good morning, Rick.
Good morning, that's from Italy. Lawrence Milay Canals is in Paris.
Absolutely, thank you. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, and Els Brugman, I think you're in Brussels, is that right?
Indeed. Good morning, everyone.
Right, well, we'll be coming to our speakers, and I'll introduce them a bit more fully slightly later on. And we'll be hearing more about the JRC's support for the zero pollution goal, about the chemical footprint of production and consumption in the EU, and we'll have a demonstration of the consumer footprint calculator, assessing the environmental impacts of your lifestyle. Yes, yours. So I'm looking forward to that. So first, to better understand the support of the JRC to zero pollution ambition by using life cycle assessment, I'm delighted to be joined by Giovanni De Santi. He is not in vision, but we'll be able to hear him. He is the director of the Sustainable Resources Directorate at the JRC. And thank you very much for joining us to introduce this session, Giovanni. Over to you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. I think it's a real pleasure to be with you today. And you're right, the JRC has developed since a long time many methods, let's say, to calculate the environmental footprint, consumer footprint, and social footprint based on the life cycle analysis concept, which is, again, the new way you should calculate any kind of impact you want to calculate. And so in a few moments, Serenella Sala, she's the leading scientist of that group. She will present this new tool, which is, again, a web, if you like, it's just an application. So a kind of tool that everybody can use to see how much his behavior is impacting in a good or bad way into the environment, to the social, this is something which is, I think, very innovative. I think it has been now proposed also to be extended to the old staff of the Commission and presented today. And it was already presented to the JRC staff. So again, I think that what is important now is to develop, in my view, these new methodologies whereby you can calculate in a kind of scientific, correct, robust way the different impact on the environment that you can have from different type of product, from different type of behavior, from different types of systems, from different type of organizations. I think this is the new methodology the Commission wants to bring ahead in many, many different policies. And that's why the JRC wants to develop this kind of cross-cutting horizontal tool, which possibly will be applied also at large by society. So thank you very much for this initiative, because again, give us the opportunity to start a very forward-looking scientific discussion. How can we really develop this life cycle analysis and the different environmental, social, or even economic impact by following the entire cycle of any product or any organization or any behavior? So I thank you again very much, and I would like to pass over to Serenella. She's going to present, in fact, what we need to discuss and get acquainted today. So the new tool for any kind of consumer, just to see how much his consuming behavior will impact and will affect or not the environment social aspect. Thank you very much. Serenella, over to you, please.
Unmute yourself, Serenella. Well, I don't know whether she can hear me. Can you hear me, Serenella? Well, I can tell you that she is the top expert in life cycle assessments, and she's the deputy head of the Land Resources Unit at the JRC, close colleague of Giovanni. And I don't know whether she's dropped out.
Because she was with us.
Yes, she is, and I can see that she's still tuned in, but she is muted. So she may be having some technical problems. So I'm going to suggest that perhaps we move on to Esther. What do you think, Esther? Do you think you're ready to do your virtual tour?
Yes, we can do so, yeah.
Why not? Because I think you've got a video as well as some slides. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this is the key part of this session, so it's appropriate that we just get on with it. We are talking about the consumer footprint calculator, which shows how we can all calculate the impacts of our own lifestyles. And Esther here is the scientific officer at the JRC, so a virtual tour is coming up. So over to you, Esther Sanya-Mingao.
Thank you so much, Rick. So unfortunately, we had to skip Serenella's presentation, but after she will present it, and she will give you further details on the underpinning life cycle assessment based indicator that the calculator is based on. So this calculator is aiming at providing a citizen perspective and allowing citizens to calculate their own environmental footprint. If we can go to the next slide, please. So policies promoting a more sustainable lifestyle, including a reduced environmental pollution due to our lifestyle. But if we would need to change by tomorrow our current consumption patterns and behaviors, what would be your changes to make? Would it be about the food you eat, or how you move around, or maybe about the energy or water that you consume at your house? It's difficult to take such decisions without having the proper information. So to better understand how changes should be made, we need to first understand how our lifestyle is contributing to the environmental impacts. Are we impacting beyond the limits of our planet? Are we impacting above an average consumer? Are we impacting the same to all the different impact categories and environmental aspects? And also, we need to identify what consumption patterns or behaviors are leading and driving these environmental impacts. We might have in mind to change some specific behavior. Let's put as example, maybe changing some of our purchasing habits, but actually the big impact in my consumption might be due to, as you mentioned in the poll, food consumption. So I might be wrong in the change I want to promote. So we need to be aware of where we need to focus our efforts in changing the lifestyle toward reducing pollution and the associated environmental impacts. And we need quantitative information to do so. So this is the background of the consumer footprint calculator. The goal of this tool is to increase awareness of the environmental impacts of lifestyles. And the calculator will allow EU citizens to assess the environmental impacts of their lifestyle by assessing two main questions. First, what is the impact of your lifestyle? The tool will allow you to quantify the impacts of your lifestyle in different metrics and for different impact categories. And the second question, how can you improve current environmental impacts? The tool will allow you to identify main hotspots. So what are the aspects of our lifestyle contributing the most to the impacts? And also evaluate changes in your lifestyle and how they affect on your personal environmental footprint. But let's have an overview on how the calculator works. First, the calculator collects through a questionnaire detailed information on consumption intensity and behaviors regarding 5 areas of consumption, including food, mobility, appliances, household goods, and housing. This information is then evaluated to provide your personal environmental footprint. These results can be explored by the 16 environmental impact categories of the European footprint method, as well as a single weighted score to have a unitary value. You can assess your footprint against the planetary boundaries to identify whether you are within the Earth's ecologic limits. You can also explore the impacts by area of consumption and individual products to identify, as we mentioned, which are the most relevant consumption patterns in your impacts. And also you can compare your results with the average EU citizen as a reference. This is, however, not the first tool available for citizens, but this calculator has certain added values. Regarding the calculation side, it employs user-specific consumption data that you provide through the questionnaire. It's a life cycle-based tool for which all products have been evaluated using the same systemic cradle-to-grave approach, so considering the entire life cycle of the product from where raw materials are extracted to the end-of-life management. The data for assessing the environmental impacts of the products, or what we can also call an emission factor, have been calculated prioritizing EU market average for a better representation. On the results side, you can assess your performance against the planetary boundaries and the average EU citizen. There is also high granularity in the results by assessing 5 areas of consumption and around 150 products. And also it provides tips to enhance more sustainable lifestyles. So now thanks for your attention on this introduction, and let's start our virtual tour to the consumer footprint calculator through the video.
Welcome to the virtual tour of the Consumer Footprint Calculator, which is hosted in the Know SDGs platform of the European Commission. With this tool, you can estimate your personal environmental impact after answering to a list of questions on your lifestyle. This will allow you to understand which is your current footprint and which consumption patterns are driving these impacts. For a more accurate footprint, we recommend you use your bills and check the characteristics of the car you use the most. Let's go ahead and explore the questionnaire. First, to understand your eating habits, you are asked to provide information on your daily consumption in terms of portions of some products like vegetables or milk. Note that an explanation is provided on the amount of each food item that the tool considers as one portion. In the next pages, you are asked to indicate the weekly consumption of other specific food products like fruits and nuts, dairy products, meat, fish and seafood, cereals or chocolate, and alcoholic beverages. Concerning mobility, if you travel by car, you can provide information on the amount of cars owned by your entire household and provide specific details about the car you use the most, like the type of fuel or the average annual distance. If you travel with a moped or a motorcycle, details on the motor size and the average annual distance are required. If you travel by public transport, you can indicate the average monthly hours that you travel by train, metro, or bus. Lastly, you can also provide information on your national, continental, and extracontinental flights. Regarding appliances, you are asked to provide information on the number of appliances your entire household have, including kitchen appliances, electronics, or washing appliances. Note that your footprint depends on whether you try to fix your appliances before replacing them with new ones. At a personal level, information of the number of mobile phones you have and the frequency of replacement is required. Concerning household goods, you can provide information on the number of shoes you buy every year, as well as of different clothes. The share of clothes you buy second-hand is also relevant. Also, you can indicate your shopping habits regarding physical newspaper and books. The last area of consumption concerns housing. First, you need to provide information on the country you live in, the type of house, the number of household members, and the year of construction or refurbishment. Then, you can provide information from your bills regarding electricity consumption from different sources, tap water consumption, and energy consumption for heating. With this, we have all the detailed information and you can click Calculate to explore your results. You can explore 4 main results. First, an assessment against the planetary boundaries allows you to understand whether your personal footprint is exceeding them. You can assess the single score of your environmental footprint or explore the 16 individual impact categories. You can also evaluate your results by the 5 areas of consumption, again exploring your single score or the individual impact categories. You can compare your personal footprint with the average EU citizen, understanding also at the level of area of consumption and for the different impact categories evaluated. Finally, you can explore for each area of consumption which are the products that are contributing the most to your personal footprint. This allows you to understand how consumption patterns could be modified to reduce your footprint. For this reason, the tool is providing you with tips on how you can improve in this specific area of consumption.
So this is our virtual tour to the consumer footprint calculator, and we hope that this gives you the willingness to start using the calculator to quantify your own impacts and to discover which are the main aspects regarding patterns and behavior that you can start changing towards this ambition of the zero pollution and the associated environmental impacts.
Wow, thank you very much, Esther. That's incredibly comprehensive. It's a bit scary, actually, that you have to be so honest and go into so much detail. You mentioned chocolate. I can't eat have to eat less chocolate. Very interesting indeed. Can you just tell me where people find it if they want to try it themselves and go through this torture to find out what they ought to do? Where do they find it?
Yes, we will provide the link in the latest slide of this session today.
Okay, at the end of the session, there'll be a slide with a link. Excellent. Well, thank you very much. There's some interesting things there that I didn't quite understand. Planetary boundaries. We have planetary boundaries and the ecological limits on Earth. Is that some kind of standard that you measure everything against?
Yes, so just very shortly, in the tool we provide also background information for the citizens to understand all these maybe more scientific concepts that might be complex for them. But just very shortly, these planetary boundaries are science-based thresholds defined in order to understand what are the ecological limits for some ecological processes, being, for example, one of them climate change. And for these ecological processes, scientists have defined what is the limit that we can quantify in order to understand if we are behaving properly within this, what they call limit, and we give a space to ecology to recover, or whether we are beyond this limit and we might put at risk the self-recovery of the ecological process.
That's very clear. I understand. Thank you very much. So it's not arbitrary. You're trying to make sure you stay within reasonably scientific limits. That's really interesting. Remember, everyone watching, you can use Slido to ask a question or make a comment. Please keep them short and sweet. And you can mark any questions that other people have asked if you particularly like them. And so they'll obviously get a bit of priority. I wanted to say thank you, Esther. We're going to move on. And from Italy, I think it's about time we went to Paris and to be joined by Laurence Mila-Canals. He is the head of the life cycle unit of the UN Environment Programme. He's going to briefly guide us through the UNEP's activities on the environmental impacts of consumers. So thank you for joining us, Laurence, and over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Rick, and good morning, good day, good afternoon, wherever you are, to everybody. So first, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting UNEP to talk in this EU Green Week about our work on environmental footprints and lifestyles. I'll certainly try to go through a very quick overview without stopping too much, but just to go a little bit on the kind of work that we have been doing. And a lot of it is really to support the kind of calculations that Esther was telling us about. So a lot of the work done in UNEP around footprints and assessments of life cycle assessments is about enhancing the enabling conditions to calculate these footprints. So many of the audience, I hope, know about the Life Cycle Initiative, which is hosted in UNEP since 2002. With the idea of increasing the access and interoperability of LCA databases, for instance. So we have the Life Cycle Data Access Network to make the access to data more interoperable and easier for everybody. We've also been providing support on the generation of data and through publications or the technical LCA database technical help desk. And also the Life Cycle Initiative, in essence, was born out of the need to provide credible global recommendations on life cycle impact assessment indicators. So the indicators that we use, for instance, to talk about the impacts on climate change or the impacts on water. Several of these indicators, we have also been working with the colleagues in the JRC, and many of them are taken up, for instance, in the European Environmental Footprint Method, and other international approaches like the International EPD system. But also, as we saw with Esther, we don't stop. I mean, it's not enough to stop at calculating the footprints. The LCA results, the life cycle assessment results, really become meaningful once they are applied to inform decisions and to make a change. And this is really what we're talking about today. So moving on. There we go to the next slide, which is really my last already. I mean, we have a limited time, but we wanted essentially to say how the work on footprint and informs the recommendations that are coming out from UNEP and that we promote through the work on sustainable lifestyles. As we know, I mean, it's important to recognize that individual footprints are driven to a large extent by the personal choices that we have. And many of these choices were exemplified in the previous presentation. And those of us in the most affluent countries and those of us who are kind of, the top consumers, we have a disproportionate impact on the planet. So we have been generating our lifestyles driven by ambitions or ideals such as bigger and more. We want to shift this focus to and the attention to healthier and better. We want to live better, not to live, bigger lives and with more consumption. For this, we also need to empower the individuals to take action. And having the knowledge, calculating the footprints is already good, but we need to then bridge the gap between the knowledge and the action. It's, a great example of what we're doing on this is the Anatomy of Action. It's this website that you see in the screen, anatomyofaction.org, where we have specific actions that individuals can take. Each one of these actions is informed by life cycle assessment studies, and they are proposed in a fun and positive way. The idea is to target a broad audience, but especially the youth. And actually, this set of actions is already as well connected with the footprint calculator that Esther just presented. So now, I mean, the key challenge for me today is to challenge everybody in the audience to go immediately, or just after this session, to go immediately to anatomyofaction.org and then commit to take action in your everyday life. Or even better, that would be the the cherry on the cake. You can calculate first your key footprint areas with the environmental footprint tool, and then from there you select the best actions in your own anatomy of action, and then crack on those key areas of impact that you have. And before I hand the microphone back, just let me invite you as well to drop by the UNEP's exhibition stand at the EU GreenWeek Hall 3. It's hall number 3. To obtain more information on the UNEP work on addressing pollution through lifestyles. So please go there. You know that this Saturday is World Environment Day as well, and we will be launching officially the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. So this is really a global rallying call for everybody to do your part on reviving our damaged ecosystems. So you will find everything in that stand. So be sure to visit UNEP stand in Hall 3. So Hall 3, that's it. I've said it 3 times. I think that's enough for you to get it. Thank you very much. I'll be happy to answer any questions, Rick, when we get to the Q&A session.
Thank you very much, Lorenz. Yes, I'm sure we'll have some questions. And of course, you can visit Hall 3 virtually. And yes, it's World Environment Day on Saturday, so this is all very topical. Thank you very much for all that. I'm going to ask Els Brugman to join us for her take on this. She is the head of policy and enforcement at Euroconsumers, an independent organization working across Europe to represent the interests of us, the consumers. So let's hear a bit more about consumer power from Els Brugman.
Hello, everyone. And on behalf of Euroconsumers, let me first say thank you for the invitation to joining this conversation and sharing the consumer perspective on what is indeed an essential element of the green transition. Actually, this topic is very dear to our heart. As a matter of fact, it goes straight to the core of a sustainability strategy that we have developed at Euroconsumers and which we like to call Approved by Tomorrow. Here you have the next slide. So actually, Approved by Tomorrow is all about this consumer-centered, consumer empowering, but above all, consumer-driven approach to sustainability. We know consumers have a crucial role to play. You need to have them on board because we can take whatever well-crafted measure we want. If you don't have the support of consumers, it will never reach the intended results. However, it's about more than just support. The real consumer power can go even beyond that. Together, consumers are many, and together they have the power and the critical mass by deciding what they buy and they don't buy, for example, to steer markets towards a certain direction, towards a greener path. That's why we like to say that the new consumer power is a green one. And actually, that is what Approved by Tomorrow is all about. It's about empowering consumers to take upon a leading role and steer towards a more greener society and economy. Now, the good news is that consumers also want to be on board. More than 90% believe climate change is a major problem. So we know consumers want to tackle climate change. They want to contribute to the green transition. The problem is they don't always know how to. And that's why this environmental footprint tool is so important. If we want consumers to act upon it, to make greener choices, and even become a steering, accelerating factor in the green transition, well, then they have to know what to tackle first. So empowerment always starts with knowledge. It's always like that. It starts with being informed. The environmental footprint tool will create awareness, but it also indicates, and that's a good point, it also indicates to consumers in what areas they can make a difference. It invites to act upon it, and I would invite everyone to give it a try. Not only the average consumers, but maybe also the ones who think they are really already well informed. Don't take it for granted. I have to say, I considered myself as a fairly conscious, sustainable consumer, and I have to admit, at a certain point, it was quite an eye-opener as well. But having that said, and here I want to copy also Lawrence, of course, it doesn't stop here. It doesn't stop here for consumers, and it doesn't stop here for consumer organizations. Having a clear screenshot of your footprint is a crucial part of the puzzle, but it's equally crucial to also secure the next steps, which means we need to give proper support and guidance to consumers with hands-on concrete advice on how they can make more sustainable choices. It means that consumers need to be well informed with trustworthy information about how sustainable a product or service really is, so they can make real choices. And it means that they need to be able to trust that what is called green is actually green and not just greenwashed. So there's also an important track for enforcement there. But above all, if we want consumers to make the more sustainable choices, we need to make sure that the greener options, the products and services are there. So we need to make sure that consumers, above all, first and foremost, have access to this green, more green, convenient and affordable alternatives. So we definitely need to keep on pushing for the development of these more sustainable products and services. And to that regard, of course, regulation and standardization is very important. But we also believe there's a big role, there's a place for dialogue, collaboration, and partnerships. We want to reach out to each stakeholder that is equally convinced as we are that collaboration is key to move forward towards a more greener society and economy. And of course, this means collaborating with policymakers like we are doing right here, but also with business players. We see it also as our duty as a consumer cluster to reach out to entrepreneurs, startups, industries, big and small, and by offering them what we know and what we have as a consumer organization, and that is a thorough knowledge of what consumers want and need. By offering them this kind of intel, we think we can co-create sustainable solutions, innovative sustainable solutions, in a way that it works for both consumers and businesses. So it's all about finding this win-win. It's not an easy job, and it goes together with all other things we need to do. But we are convinced that every match we can find between what consumers want and need to be more sustainable and what businesses are able to offer is also a step forward towards a more balanced ecosystem that is able to respond to the pressing challenges in a better way. So with this positive note, I want to wrap up on it.
Thank you very much, Els Brugman. That's very interesting that you say empowerment requires knowledge, and one sometimes wonders when you go shopping whether what you call greenwashing is on the labels. And do you think labeling clearly defines what kind of damage you might be doing by buying a product, or is it just too confusing, or the businesses don't want you to know? Well, how is labeling?
Well, for the moment, it's not working perfectly. Of course, as mentioned before, we need to set standards. So consumers should know that a product is safe and sustainable. But also labeling has an important role to play to empower consumers to make exactly the right choices, and as such also be a relevant factor in the market to steering consumers towards these, towards more sustainability. Having that said, for the moment, we have a bunch of labels and they're not regulated at all. So this is definitely something we need to take care of. Labels have a really important place in the green transition, but we need to make sure that when a consumer sees this label, he can trust it and say, okay, this is actually really sustainable and not greenwashed. So there's a lot of work there in terms of maybe setting more criteria and standards for these labels, but also enforcing them, and that is a role for us also as consumer organization, checking whether, they actually comply to the criteria and it's not greenwashed.
Well, that's one very specific thing that would help us to reduce our personal environmental footprints, and we can take that away from that one. We've got some time now to take some of our questions. There's quite a few of them coming in. There's one directly about Esther, your presentation about the consumer footprint calculator. And it's about, does it provide transparent information on the data sources used for the calculations, or is it a black box? So, I mean, where does your data come from?
Well, the consumption intensity data is provided by their own user, so it's their own data. Regarding the environmental impact intensity data for each of the products, this is a full life cycle model developed by GRC, and we employ different types of data. For example, eco-label background reports, or also commercial life cycle inventory databases. And all the models are publicly available because they are reported so in the GRC technical reports, and they can see all the different data that have been employed, what are the details of the models, and how the different, for example, life cycle stages are considered. Okay. So in their own tool, they cannot see all this information, otherwise it would be overwhelming. But people interested on those aspects can go back to the methodological reports.
Fine. All right. Well, thank you very much. And there's a question here, which I think I'm going to direct at Lorenz from UNEP. It says global trade will inevitably cause pollution. How important is reducing air miles for food and other goods? That's an interesting question, because obviously it goes to the heart of this tension between business and making money, otherwise your business goes bust, and global trade. Do we advise people not to buy bananas from the Caribbean and not to buy asparagus from Peru, because I mean global trade has got to flourish, hasn't it? So from the point of view of United Nations, what's your view on buying local?
Super tricky question, but certainly a very important one. And I mean, what I can say also from the experience of this specific LCAs is that sometimes the miles is not the main problem, but it's the mode of transportation. So certainly transporting food specifically, but any other goods by air, that causes a big chunk of their environmental impacts. So there are ways in which trade can be promoted, and certainly trade is a positive way for economic development for many nations. This needs to be taken into account. I mean, there was usually the conflict between, well, do you want to go to be global and fair or local and green? Sometimes, it is not as clear cut as that. You can certainly be buying from other places if it's been transported by land or by sea. Usually those impacts are not so important. And there are many other important considerations, such as what is it that you're eating? So eating more of a plant-based diet rather than animal-based, that has a much bigger positive effect than eating local. So if you're eating your local beef rather than importing some vegetables from abroad, you're still having more impact because of the meat.
Okay, I mean, there is, that's interesting. You should use that, because there is actually a question directly about that. I mean, obviously people who want to know, what's the worst thing I do? You know, what's the thing I can change which would have most effect? And we've heard Paul McCartney talking about No Meat Mondays, and other campaigners saying we should eat less meat, eat more veg. That will not only help to prevent greenhouse gas emissions, but also pollution. I mean, there's a lot of pollution comes from farm animals. So is eating meat one of the most polluting activities? And I'm going to ask Esther if that's what you find out. Is it one of the worst things we can do?
Might be one of the main current consumption patterns in the EU leading to environmental impacts. From our studies evaluating the entire consumption at the EU, food, mobility and housing were the areas mainly contributing the most to the different environmental impacts, including pollution. And within food, Certainly, animal-based products were the ones contributing the most. This is associated not only to the environmental intensity profile of the product, but also to the consumption intensity of the product.
Yeah, okay. I mean, that doesn't really tell us whether it's worse than travel and worse than heating your home, but it certainly has an impact, doesn't it? And it's something that we can do quite easily. It doesn't cost anything to decide you're going to eat a bit less red meat. I've got a question here about the small changes in my lifestyle. It's a difficult one, and I'm going to ask Els to comment on this. Somebody is basically saying, I don't think small changes in my lifestyle can make much difference to global pollution. Will it make a difference? I mean, obviously, when you look at the power stations and the massive pollution coming from aircraft and other things, and you look at what difference you can make, it feels a bit like a fly on the bottom of an elephant. So can consumers really make a material impact, Els?
Yes, they can. I mean, the challenge is so big. We need everyone on board, big, small businesses, consumers. Everyone needs to be on board to support the path towards more sustainability. And to that regard, there is no one single silver bullet to solve the problem. It requires action on many angles. For example, by making sure that we have more sustainable products on the market, but also consumers have a role to play. So I would politely disagree with the comment that it doesn't make any difference if I change my lifestyle. Yes, it does, together with many, many other things.
Okay, I mean, obviously, consumers can be a big lobby, and I'm aware that you do lobby upstream. That is to say, the products that come to market, you try and get the manufacturers on packaging and other subjects. And I know that working together, you do have quite a lot of power. There's a question from Christina, which talks about a question of individual economy, whether one can change one's lifestyle. If you're still hearing us, Giovanni, you've been studying this subject for a long time. People simply can't afford to not use wood-burning stoves or change their lifestyles considerably. It may seem a bit of a luxury to say, oh, well, I'll just eat vegetables once a week. Do you think that there's an economic barrier to people actually changing their behavior? Unmute yourself. Is he still there? I'm not sure whether he's connected. I'm going to ask Lorenz that question. What do you think? Is there a big economic barrier? Because in certain parts of the world, people really don't have any choices about what they eat and how they heat their homes.
Absolutely. And we also have to be careful of who are we asking these changes. I mean, I fully agree with Els. I mean, either you're part of the solution or you're part of the problem. We all have a part to play. And at the same time, when we're speaking to the high consumers in affluent countries, we are the ones who are really driving the biggest crisis in the planet. So the issue there is not usually about whether they can afford or not. It's usually that consumers probably they certainly can afford, and sustainable lifestyles will actually cost them less. If it costs you less, that's probably already a good sign that it's probably costing less to the planet. We're talking really here of probably spending less on the most impactful issues or on the most impactful areas. And then you can have that money as well to enjoy in other areas which probably have less environmental impact and give more meaning as well to your life. So it's not really about the sacrifice of not or stop doing things. It's about doing other things which have less impact and probably are even better for you.
Yes, that's. I'm sure that's right. Just looking at the questions coming in, we don't have a lot of time, and Serenella is going to rejoin us again to tell us a little bit more about what she was going to say earlier. There's a technical question here for you, Esther. Will the calculator which and the link to it will be on a caption at the end of this session, I understand. Will the calculator be available via APIs to be integrated in third-party platforms and experiences? So can other people link to this?
The calculator will be launched, as it was mentioned in the virtual tour, within the No SDGs platform. So it will be available for the moment in this platform of the European Commission.
Okay, so people can link to the JRC's thing if they want to on their own websites. Nothing to stop them. It's not blocked.
No, it's open for any citizen to participate. Yeah.
Okay, and more questions coming in. I'll just see if we can take one more. How would the average EU consumer in their behavior and consumption trends put people in the red zone? If so, how do you motivate people without scaring them? How do you motivate people? Perhaps some people who aren't particularly interested in all this, and if you scare them, is it going to motivate them? Is it a carrot and stick? What's in it for me? So, I mean, Lawrence, you must have experience of this kind of trying to break through to convince people.
Yes, but that's probably the most tricky part. I think I'm also one of the scientists behind putting the numbers out there, then communicating to consumers. I mean, maybe else also has some views, but certainly I think it's not about scaring people. It's really about portraying the image of that. It's not really about bigger and more. It's about better quality of life. So if we convey this message of a positive change to a better lifestyle, that it's not just better for you, it's also better for the planet, I think that's the key way of promoting it. And that's through the anatomy of action. That's also what we try to do. I mean, it's something cool. It's upbeat. It's kind of, that's something you want to do. So yeah, I think that's probably the message, although we need psychologists and sociologists, and we need all the social scientists here that help us to convey the message in a positive way that people want to embrace.
Yes, it's a big subject, includes education. As a journalist, it includes media. I'm going to see if Sarah Nella is back with us. Anna, is she able to join us to make a contribution now?
I'm here.
Good, excellent. Nice to see you. We can hear you too. So you've got about 5 minutes. So just tell us what you were going to add.
Yeah, it will be just on few points that were mentioned also by the other panelists. But this session is organized in the GreenWeek that is dedicated to the zero pollution. And actually, this tool and in general the tools that are based on life cycle assessment are allowing to assess impacts and that are going beyond the climate change. So we are all very much aware of the impact it might have on the climate. Maybe we don't know exactly how much, and we are giving some scaring number saying that we have to reduce a lot, but there are other elements as driver of pollution. So it will be important for those using the calculator reflecting also on, for example, the impact on water availability, on land use, and potentially on other dimensions. The second message is on the labeling, because the JRC and the European Commission are working on this tool for the individual awareness, are working on assessing at country scale how Europe is behaving also with respect of third countries, so with the trade component that you mentioned before, Rick, but it's also working on supporting the comparison of products. So there is an initiative, which is the Green Claims initiative that has been launched, and this is a policy initiative, really with the aim of enabling, at a certain point, consumer to have two products on the shelf and select them based on their environmental profile. So I just wanted, let's say, to mention this, because this tool, it's very much on ourselves with our choices, but there are other initiatives that are going in parallel, and again, going beyond the carbon footprint or the climate footprint, but understanding also other elements that could be drivers of our impact.
Yes, thank you very much indeed. Yes, indeed. It's the amount of pollution in our living environment is really disgraceful, and it has to be handled by a holistic method. The JRC, I was filming there a few years ago. It's very, very impressive place. Maybe people don't understand it as much as they should, but a lot of very interesting research going on. I think there's just more time now for one more opinion poll. So we'll get that ready, and it'll be in the form of a word cloud this time. So have you been better informed, audience, or perhaps inspired? So I'm going to ask a question. I'm going to go to my Slido polls. Which aspects of your lifestyle do you think you can change to reduce your own environmental footprint? So think about your own lifestyle and try and be positive and say, which part of my own lifestyle can I change? Perhaps even, will I change? Dare I suggest that? And we'll see what comes up in a word cloud. It's one word or maybe two: diet, food, drive less, shopping, eating, whatever you think. It's interesting that in one of the first sessions on Tuesday, the first day of the conference, the audience was asked what is the most critical pollution risk to human health, and air pollution came out on top quite clearly. So how can we help to reduce that? And even here in a provincial town in Brexit land, the air quality where I live is far from good. So we've got food choices is coming in strong, and diet, of course, is the same thing. Maybe you can adjust your diet when you're shopping. You maybe food shop more carefully. Yes, choice of food items, less meat. Meat again, food consumption. So food choices is the leader. Transport is coming in at number 2, I think, and mobility and way of commuting. So obviously, yes, people have been very struck by the fact that they have to think carefully about their food choices, but also about their transport. And it was quite interesting earlier to hear how if you have a second car, that reduces your score on the calculator by quite a lot. And clothes is in there as well. Very interesting subject that you wouldn't think that the clothes you buy and the clothes you wear can be polluting, but upstream, the whole production process, the manufacturing process, it can be polluting. So that's quite positive. Obviously, a lot of people are going to be changing their diets after this illuminating session. Thank you very much. I wondered if, Serenella, you can just conclude by giving us the main headlines. What should we all take away from this session in a sentence or two?
Okay. Yes, I think an important message that was coming is that we need really to understand more, to know more, to be more aware of our behavior in a number of domains. So what we wanted to propose with this session, and I think it's also the effort that is not only of GRC and the Commission, but also of UN and Euroconsumer, is push on one end on the increased awareness, and on the other end of proposing also solutions that are improving life of people. So I think the motto that Laurence said on better for me and better for the environment is actually where we are all moving with this kind of initiatives. So understand how can we have a nice diet, eat good food, but still having a good environment and a protection of the environment, and the same for the other dimension of consumption. Go on holidays and then take our bicycles and go around and pollute less. So just some examples, but really to put together a good life as objective, and this reduction of the environment. And for what concern the topic of the zero pollution, again, having all together joint efforts to help people understand that there is for sure climate change, but also many other dimensions to be taken into account when we select a product and when we act in a certain manner.
Thank you, Serenella. Thank you very much, Serenella. That's perfect summary, and we're running out of time, and so I just wanted to thank you, and thank to all our excellent speakers, and to Esther for organising this fascinating session, and to the helpers from Teamwork who made it happen technically, and most of all to you, the audience, for tuning in and contributing so well. I found it interesting and useful, and I hope you did too. So it's time for the GreenWeek lunch break now. Maybe I'll choose a locally sourced vegetarian option today. We've certainly been given plenty of food for thought. So thank you for watching. Enjoy the rest of GreenWeek. And from me and the panel, goodbye.